So the big picture for this lesson is compounding interest. Now, compounding interest means that you're earning money on the interest income as well. In other words, the interest income is reinvested in whatever it is you have. So here's a graph for an example of a savings account, initial deposit of $300, and the interest rate is 0.04% compounded monthly. So the input is the number of months, 12, 60, and 240, and the output is the dollar value that you'll have over time. So for example, in 240 months or 20 years, you would have $782 instead of $300. And that sounds good, but you also want to keep in mind that there's something called inflation, and the dollar loses value over time. So it's possible, even though you have more money, it might not be able to buy as much. So that's something to consider. So here's the function for that situation. It's just a simple exponential growth, and it's in terms of months. So it's 300 times 1.004, which is the growth factor, which is 1 plus 0.4%, and then to the x, where x is the number of months. So here you can see how compound interest works, where you're just repeatedly multiplying by the principal plus the interest for that year. So you can see that you're repeatedly multiplying by 1.05 each year. And so that's how you get that exponential growth or compounding interest. So this first formula is typically used for compounding annually, and that means once per year. And this is a general formula where you're compounding n times per year. So if you're compounding 4 times a year, 12 times a year, or whatever, the n is the number of compounding, and then the r is the interest rate. And then t, of course, is the number of years. So you can use a second formula for any situation, and this first formula is typically only used for annual situations. So here's an example of using the general formula. Situation is you have $3,000 in savings that earns 5% interest compounded quarterly. Write a model for this situation. So here's the formula. It's $3,000, which is the initial deposit, and that's the annual interest rate divided by the number of times it's compounded, and that's how you create the growth factor. And the 4t, that represents that it's compounded 4 times per year. So basically you're going to be using these formulas to determine the future value of some assets. And that's the big picture.